marched to the Battle of New Orleans.
2 weeks after the Marines landed at Da Nang, members of the University of Michigan faculty organized a night-long discussion between professors and some 3,000 students about the escalation of the war.
I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ann Arbor, Michigan in March of 1965 had one of the first teach-ins about the war. It began in the anthropology department, and my father was in the anthropology department. And so our family was being pulled in a lot of directions, just as my country was.
I was born in 1962. As I was growing up, it was sort of in the background, this big, important, and not good thing was happening. And I could sense that all the adults were concerned, talking about it, but I really didn't understand what was going on. And as I got older, I began to sort of ask myself, what is this thing that was happening? Sort of overshadowing my whole childhood, basically.
So we had a very different idea of patriotism. So we began an era in which two groups of Americans, both thinking that they were acting patriotically, went to war with each other.
We've spent a decade trying to put our arms around a hugely complicated and controversial event in American history. We didn't have an agenda. We didn't have an axe to grind. We had a story that we wanted to tell.
We think we're making this film at the perfect time because the people who lived through it are very much alive, very much aware of what they went through, and at an age where they want to talk about it.
We hope that we might be some agency of healing for the soldiers who lived through it, to take whatever slight burden off the already immense burden they still carry.
I think we have tried to make a film that everyone will be interested in watching, whether you're 18 or 80, whether you're a man or a woman, whether your politics are left or right. I think we want the film to inspire a new conversation about the war, but also the film is asking a lot of questions, and we don't pretend to answer them. We just want to throw those questions out for our country to think about again.
I've been to the wall more than once. When I look back at the war and, think of the horrible things, we said to vets who were returning, calling them baby killers and worse. I feel very sad about that. I can only say that, we were kids too, just like they were.
Wars are so extraordinarily revealing, obviously of the worst of humanity, but as it turns out also the best of humanity. As you dig deeper, as you go in and reach into the lives of the people we spoke to, you can understand new dimensions of courage and new dimensions of heroism. And it may not take place always, in the case of this war, on the battlefield. This is without a doubt the most ambitious project that we have ever undertaken. And I would probably suggest that this may be one of the biggest undertakings of our network. But the most important thing with regard to PBS is that this is the only place it could have been done. This was the only network on Earth that would have provided the bandwidth to permit us to go in and study it as we have over the last decade and come to terms with a very complicated portrait.
I fear that there's a kind of national amnesia about Vietnam. We've erased the horror of the kinds of mistakes that were made. I think this film, at this point in history, might be a terrific antidote to that.
To see these kids who had the least to gain, there wasn't anything to look forward to. They were going to be rewarded for their service in Vietnam. And yet, their infinite patience, their loyalty to each other, their courage under fire was just phenomenal. And you would ask yourself, how does America produce young men like this?